I'm hoping to answer some very important questions about the Aztecs today. The first is, why do their military production buildings produce units faster than any other civilization? Is it perhaps because of their access to the red pepper, putting a pep in the step of every single unit? And why are the monks so beefy despite having no access to cows? Is it possibly that they are directly ritually sacrificing tamales straight to their stomachs? We'll find out in a moment. Food is arguably the most important resource in Age of Empires 2, but all we see in game is just a single set of numbers. Throughout this series, we will be diving in to see exactly what foods each civilization prepared and ate, and how well I can recreate these recipes. This is Meals of Empires. Let's start off with just some background history on the Aztecs. They were centered in the Valley of Mexico, where we have modern-day Mexico City. The period is from 1300 to 1521, pretty far along in the Age of Empires 2 period, though there were plenty of Nahuatl-speaking groups prior to the Aztecs. For example, the Olmecs were very much in the same region during the Antiquity before Common Era. But similar to the Mayans and the Incas, they're limited to a completely different group of foods than the rest of the civilizations we're covering in this series, and everything about the Aztecs can kind of just be culminated into one single recipe, and that is the tamale. Specifically, today we'll be making a pumpkin tamale. And if you're not familiar with my pronunciation, in the US, it might be tamales. Maybe that's more helpful. The first part of cooking today involves getting this guy half cooked. This, despite its look, is indeed a pumpkin. This is one of the Dutch varieties. I don't find it aesthetically as pleasing as the American varieties. I think it's this little section right here, a little nipple on either side. I just like a big fat stem coming out of the pumpkin. It's like traditionally what you see in cartoons and comics. Let me know what you think in the comments if this looks still appetizing to you. Hopefully once we have this cooked in the microwave and cut up, roasted with allspice and pepper, it'll be a lot more appetizing. One other thing to mention, I'm cooking this in the microwave. Obviously Aztecs didn't have access to the microwave. You could also just cook in the oven, but I know the microwave is fairly efficient for this first step, just to get the tissue softened up a little bit, and that's why I'm going for that, just for time's sake. So to make our Masa Harina, to make the core of the tamales, we are using two different harinas. This is not just plain cornmeal, this is nixtalamized, which means it's gone through a chemical reaction using ash or I forget what the common or the modern material is, what modern compound that's used, but effectively you make it sticky. That's what it is. We are going for 3 cups. We have about 25 corn husks to work with, so that's roughly 3 cups of corn flour at around 3 cups of flour to 2 cups of water ratio for making our masa. So that was about 340, and I'm going to finish this bag. We're not going to go for super exact, we might have some left over. Now for the water, we want about 400 milliliters. Traditional tamales are made with a variety of different oils. I'm going to be using avocado oil since that would definitely been available. And then to that, we're going to add about 3 tablespoons of salt, maybe not quite, about 2 tablespoons of salt, and then mix all of it with our hands and add in the extra water if we need it. It smells so good already. Like we haven't even done anything. We just mixed some wonderful ingredients together and it smells delicious. It's just the avocado oil plus the corn, I think, is what does it for me. This is very much a process of feeling out the dough, feeling how it feels in your hand, and adding water as necessary. You can also use broth instead of water, but water is just such a easily accessible resource. And one of our trivia questions later will be about the water source for the Aztecs. All right, that feels pretty good, ready to be spread onto the corn husks. But of course, we do need to make the filling first with the pumpkins before we get too far ahead of ourselves. We can add more water as we're putting it in the filling if we feel like it is getting a little bit too crumbly. I mentioned the allspice when we did the Mayans for the tacos. They are the immature fruit of a tree that is native to the Bahamas and the islands off the coast of Central America. And of course, they would have arrived to Mexico and been able to be transferred along the trade lines. And there is no better tool for this than the tool straight from Mexico, the molcajete. And I can smell it all just ground up, those cinnamon smells, those nutmeg smells, all of those fine spices all in one spice. So for our pumpkin, we're going to slice it in half, pull out the seeds, and then remove the skin off of the flesh. Then we're going to saute it along with our ground allspice and our red pepper. Pumpkin is so good in taste and for you. Eat more pumpkin. That's what you should get out of this video. And if you can put it in tamales, all the better. While the skillet's heating up, we can do the first trivia question. What highly prized crop grown in the volcanic Chiapas region in southern Mexico along the Guatemala border made it a target for Aztec conquest? Aztec conquest. So what is the prized crop that was grown in that region? The answer, of course, is cocoa from Central and South America. The region along the modern border between Guatemala and southern Mexico is very well suited for growing cocoa due to its tropical climate. So that is why there's that disparate section of Aztec territory further south on the map than the rest that's around the Valley of Mexico. So to saute, I'm going to again add some avocado oil, and we are going to actually start with the pepper. Or no, I'll start with the pumpkin since it's right here on the cutting board. There are definitely some parts that have cooked a lot faster than others, but we only put it in the microwave for about 10 minutes. Already smells so good. I'm going to add salt now before I forget. I'm going to leave some of the seeds in the pepper. I'm just going to remove the inner rib because it can sometimes be a little bit tough. You don't want any hard items. But the seeds themselves I'm not too concerned about. Just going to dice it up very finely so that it's evenly spread out in our mixture, our filling. All very warming. Like pumpkin, you think fall. Pepper, you think just hot, I guess. And let's add all of that ground allspice as well. There will be some ingredients that are missing, as they usually are for the cuisine of the Americas. We do not have any lime to add. We do not have any pepper. At least like ground black pepper. We just are relying on our red peppers to provide a little bit of spiciness. We could have added a tomato to our filling, but I decided I wanted the flavors of the pumpkin to be accentuated the most. I didn't want the extra acidity of a tomato. The Aztec population would have had a much higher prevalence of veganism than many other civilizations, mainly just due to what foods, animal-based foods they had access to. Being mostly located in the Valley of Mexico, surrounded by tall mountains, which completely lacked any large mammals, there was very limited food options other than what they could hunt. And of course, there are the reports of there being cannibalistic tendencies among the Aztecs, but that's not generally a food source that you can rely on for the majority of your population, so wouldn't really be accurately representing Aztecs if I included some cannibalism in this series. So we've mashed up our filling, and then now it's just a process of putting the tamales together with the corn husks. To cook them, we are steaming them. I'll put water at the bottom of the pot. I don't have a standard steamer. Instead, I just have a pie dish that I'm going to flip upside down and place this on top, just so that the tamales are not sitting in the water at the bottom of the pot. You may remember when I tried to make the mashi for the Saracens, I didn't do a great job of keeping the mashi out of the water. When I redid the recipe later in the week, it came out a lot better, but the first try kind of turned out to be a disaster. These corn husks have been soaking for about 2 to 3 hours ahead of time. So for the tamales, you take a spoon and a handful of your masa. I did add a little bit more water to this masa to get it more to be like Play-Doh consistency. and you spread it out the bottom. You can see it's not quite there completely, and this corn husk is a little bit torn. So you just work it in with whatever tool you have. So in this case, I'm going to switch to using my hands, and that feels about right there. And then a little spoonful of the filling. Not try to overdo it because it will just spill out otherwise. But we fold one side, fold the other side, and then pull the tab down like we're closing an envelope. And it might leak through the gaps that are in this corn husk. And then when we put it in the pan, we put it on the outside first as we move in with the other tamales, and we put the little tab facing the outside so that it stays closed. We talked about the Three Sisters growing technique when we covered the Mayans, where corn, squash, and beans are interconnected. They're grown right next to each other, and the different elements of each crop kind of benefits all the others. Another growing strategy that was used by the Aztecs was to use chinapas, which are artificial islands that were built into Lake Texcoco. They used reeds to fence in large heaps of soil, and those reeds were oftentimes salix, which is the genus for willows. There is a willow in Mexico that can grow very tall for as far as willows are concerned. But the great thing of all willows is that you can just take a stick, like just a branch with no side branches on it. It looks like a wand from a Harry Potter film or something like that. You just stick it in water in the winter, and then once spring comes out, once spring arrives, it will grow roots, it'll grow leaves. It can just sprout from the bare minimum amount of tissue. And you can just create clones like that. So the Aztecs could just stick one stick after another in January or February in the winter, and then come spring, everything would sprout up. Of course, they're not trying to grow willow necessarily, but it would root into the soil and hold their chinapas in place. The Valley of Mexico is a highland plateau with a minimum elevation of 2,200 meters, so still very high up even at the bottom of the valley, and a max elevation at the volcanic peaks surrounding a large portion of the valley of 5,000 meters, which is higher than all of the Alps. So I believe the people of the Valley of Mexico were able to produce way larger quantities of food throughout the year. And there we go. We have all of our tamales in the pot ready to steam. We're going to be steaming it for just about an hour. And if you have any leftover masa or filling, you could make a tortilla and just use the filling in that way. We'll put the remaining little small guys right on top for good luck in the traditional way. A cup of water or a quarter liter should be plenty. And then make sure that everything is well contained so we're not having any leaks, because leaks are limited to Europe at this point. While that is cooking and steaming, we can do the next 3 trivia questions. So trivia question number 2. What happened first? The foundation of Tenochtitlan as the capital of the Aztecs on Lake Texcoco. Yes, I am making it harder for myself by saying everything with as close to the proper pronunciation as possible. Or the foundation of Oxford College, where the Britons learned ballistics. The answer is that Oxford College, along with the University of Paris and the University of Bologna, were founded around 1100. Tenochtitlan is declared to have been founded on the 13th of March, 1325. Why such a specific date, you asked? Well, the Mexico City administration wanted to have a big celebration of the 600th anniversary of the city, so they just kind of said, well, this is the date that we picked out on the calendar, and we're going to say that is the date when the city was officially created. Though we know that Rome wasn't built in a day, and Tenochtitlan was probably not built in a day either. Trivia question number 3. Where did the Aztecs of Tenochtitlan get their water from? 4 possible answers in this multiple choice. Is it Lake Texcoco, what's surrounding them, underground aquifers, aqueducts, or coconuts? You would think it would be Lake Texcoco, and you would be wrong, because Lake Texcoco is completely surrounded by either mountains or high plateaus. It does not drain anywhere. So all of the salt that is being carried down by the runoff along the mountains where it rains into this basin, all those salts just stay there while the water, over time evaporates. So it just kind of gets accumulated in the basin, and humans are not very well equipped to drink salt water. Instead, they built aquifers. There was 2 aquifers that we know were built. The first was destroyed in floods, and the second was destroyed by the Spanish. And now in modern days, they use underground aquifers, but since the 1900s, there has been enough water pumped out that Mexico City is slowly sinking. And it might be slow, but it's probably faster than you're expecting. It sinks about a foot every single year. So there are some statues that have large foundations, or at least deep foundations. So they stay relatively at the same level while the street around sinks. And so now you have the issue of flooding. Because they're pulling out so much water, all of the city is sinking below everything around it. And so that becomes the new low point, and you have new flooding. Trivia question number 4. This revolves around Age of Empires 2. Which fully upgraded unit has more hit points? An Aztec monk, a Spanish missionary, a Spanish hussar, or an elite conquistador? And of course, we're doing the Aztecs, so the answer is an Aztec monk. And just for those wondering, a Spanish missionary has 65 HP, a Spanish hussar has 95 HP, an elite conquistador has 90 HP, and the only one to hit triple digits is the Aztec monk at 100 HP. It has more HP than every European and the horse it rode in on. Even Jones thinks that's a very interesting fact. Thank you for your approval, Jones. I appreciate it. All right, it is time for the first taste test. So I'm going to get a pair of wooden spoons to be able to leverage one of these out of here. Let's unwrap. It did kind of fall apart a little bit, but that's okay. But I would say these are cooked. So we have a tortilla with masa and avocado spread liberally on top of it.
I love avocado, so.
We have a tiny mini tortilla, if you wanted to start with that.
A tortilla?
Or sorry, not a tortilla. Got my mind all wrapped up in the wrong item. Our tiny little tamales. And then another one, and then another one.
What's the difference?
They're all the same, just size, based off the corn husk.
How do you eat a tamale?
With a fork. I don't know how.
So you don't eat this?
No, the corn husk is purely there for the cooking.
So can I
steaming.
eat this with the avocado?
Yeah.
Or is it supposed to be just eaten?
Yeah, you could spread it. This is purely based off for demonstration purposes at the moment. And it should be noted that Abby isn't a huge fan of squash, but with the Mayans, she was okay with it. And this is still the same family, so we're trying to figure out today how Abby feels about the pumpkin. Abby's continuing to eat, so...
I'm starving?
Yeah.
So, like...
Does that mean it's okay? Any thoughts on the overall flavors?
Pretty good.
Speechless. Better than tasteless. You take your time. There's no audience today. You can just keep enjoying it, and then once you're ready, we can do the ratings.
I'm so hungry.
Is it too spicy?
It's pumpkin-y. It's a little spicy.
But not too much.
Definitely very mild.
Yeah.
Like, it's spicy in like a pleasant way.
Yeah, just like in the background. Like a warm sunrise when you're just getting out of bed, and not like hot air blowing into your window.
No,
just like enough for a cat to get like a big nice stretch.
No, it's like it's pumpkin and it's spice, so it's like pumpkin spice.
So you're saying if you saw that at Starbucks, you'd be like, yeah, I could eat that.
I get it. Like, I get it.
Rating? Execution.
I just need the disclaimer that...
You already said you weren't an expert.
I'm sorry.
You can't be an expert on every food.
I was growing up in the middle of Ohio. We got nothing there.
The Corn Belt?
Just corn. There's corn, but we don't do this with corn.
Yeah, the corn just goes straight in a pot and then into your mouth.
We eat it raw.
Yeah.
We'll call it like a 9.
9 on execution? Okay. I can dig that. And then, should you serve this to your girlfriend? Out of 10 times, how many times would you be happy to eat the tamales?
8.5.
8.5! So, those are the two top scores, I think. That's pretty good. Aztecs, you got something going on for you. It might just be that Abby's hungry. She's like, I'm done with my rating. I'm going back to eating now. Thank you very much. Next week, we have the Persians, followed by the Spanish. Of course, I am pre-recording all these videos. So actually, in 2 days, I'm doing the Persians, and then the day after that, I'm doing the Spanish. So if there's any inconsistencies that you note, that's why. Let me know what you think of the tamales, and I'll see you in the comments.